Right.
Yeah, it's the kind of thinking that that says you get your liberals and your conservatives, but then also you have your leftists. And
Who are like
leftists,
liberals, except for more liberal
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They may break and ignore laws, not out of any sense of injustice, but because they disavow any authority but their own. Obsessed with strength, fascists are therefore vulnerable when they appear weak and pathetic, aka like the losers they are obsessed with. This was an approach taken by the anti-fascists in the German town of Wunsiedel in 2014, who transformed a neo-Nazi rally into a humiliating fundraising opportunity for the anti-Nazi organization Exit Germany. Mockery and humor can undermine fascist appeal, turning their struggle into a farce, damaging their pride, and striking at the core of hypermasculine persona that they love to project. I mean, kind of. That can happen if you have an overwhelming majority of people opposing them, right? If
Yeah,
you've got like a group of fascists and there are like 100 fascists, and then you bring 10,000 people to just openly mock them and throw shit at them, but implicit there is the threat of violence, then yeah, that works. But I guarantee you that fascists being mocked without the threat of violence isn't going to deter them.
yeah, like not at all. And
No.
it's you know
It's a very
that's a
silly liberal notion that you can stop fascism without violence.
yeah, and it's kind of dangerous to even suggest it.
Yeah. That doesn't mean I'm advocating for violence. That means like that everyone should go and get baseball bats and go be Antifa with their, you know, bandanas on over their faces. What I'm saying is that the implicit threat of a large crowd surrounding and jeering and mocking you is a threat of violence.
Yeah,
If you are attacked by this group of fascists, you will be overwhelmingly defeated.
yeah. So yeah, you don't put on like a unitard and like a bumblebee costume, and then hold up signs. Basically, don't have a Portland style
Yeah.
mockery protest of this violent of violent fascist gangs. Sorry, Portland.
Let's see. At the same time, we must never forget that even when the fascists appear defeated, ridiculous, and mockable, they are still dangerous. In the wake of Trump's electoral loss and the failed coup attempt, American fascists may indeed look harmless, but so did the Nazis in the aftermath of the absurd beer hall putsch in 1923. Following Hitler and his allies' failed attempt to seize power in Bavaria, many observers, the New York Times included, were quick to write their political epitaphs. Hitler was given a light prison sentence. He used the opportunity to dictate Mein Kampf and emerged from prison to national stardom. When the economic collapse of the Great Depression turned the Weimar Republic's crippled and polarized political gridlock into urgent crisis, the mockable Hitler and his once dismissed Nazis were prepared to step in with radical solutions. It would be a huge mistake to believe that the threat of Trump has passed. The political and cultural economic forces that created Trump and Trumpism aren't going anywhere. So this article was written before Trump's second term, and he's saying the same things that we said back then. You know, I said
Yeah,
that Joe Biden winning means Trump is going to win uh, with a large margin in the next election, and we said it was likely going to be worse, but I didn't
although
realize
it's
how bad
been
it was going to be.
yeah. I definitely want to say that Trump 2 is way worse than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's way worse than I thought it was going to be. Still not fascist, but way worse than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. What's interesting here is that the thrust of this article is about how fascism has a definition. Now Trumpism doesn't meet that definition, and it matters that we make this distinction. But then this whole last paragraph is all about how uh, Donald Trump's electoral loss and failed coup attempt there are these analogs that can be drawn back to Hitler. Yeah,
Well, okay, I don't mind drawing those analogs because Trumpism is a right wing semi populist movement, right? Because I would say that at the
or at
head
least it
of this,
was.
it's not anymore. At the head of the the MAGA movement is, of course, the Miriam Adelson and all of the same donors that donate to Republicans on a regular basis and to Democrats sometimes. Um, that's what the core of this movement is, but it has its populist hangers on. So, yeah, I mean, drawing these parallels is fine. It makes sense. But you could you could see the massive, massive institutional power still held by the MAGA movement after Trump's fall. He wasn't politically defeated.
Yeah.
He stumbled on COVID handling and inherited a and not inherited, but he stumbled on COVID handling and was up for election at a time when the economy was terrible. And of course, that economy never got any better, and it got worse actually under Biden. Not completely Biden's fault, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's that iron law of electoral politics is when the inflation is high, you throw the bums out, which is why we can count on an electoral landslide in favor of the Democrats, unless gerrymandering has really, really upset things in a way that I couldn't even foresee.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the case.
I don't think so. But yeah,
But
I
also,
imagine.
the Republicans should rest easy because Hakeem Jeffries says that, we're not gonna like try to impeach him or anything.
Yeah. So if like I said, like if taking the Democrats, believing Democrats, taking them at face value, they say they believe them when they tell you what they believe, right? Trump is a fascist, but also we're not going to prosecute him or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not gonna treat him like a fascist.
Believe them until they give you reason not to believe them. Like I don't believe anything the Democrats say or
Believe
Trump
them
says
until
for that
you,
matter.
yeah, believe them until you can just doubt them.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. The Nazis' path to power was prepared by opponents who underestimated, dismissed, and belittled them, preferring to focus on other adversaries and more familiar grudges. From its Sixth Congress in 1928 through 1934, the Stalinist Comintern employed the label of fascist against potential allies on the left, labeling reformist proponents of social democracy as supporters of social fascism. Okay, let's stop right here. I want to say,
Do you remember back in 2016, 17, whenever that was also the language of the American left?
yeah, I remember. I remember when there was a whole group of because of the rise of the DSA, the online tankies were posting about social fascists regularly. And then a couple years went by, and all those online tankies joined the DSA.
It's funny because their trajectory was very similar to the Comintern's in that they had their third period ultra radicalism, then Popular Front turn. But the difference is that there are no mass expressions of this,
right?
It was farcical instead of whatever. It's just farcical.
Let's start right here. The Nazis' path to power was prepared by opponents who underestimated, dismissed, belittled them, preferring to focus on older adversaries and more familiar grudges. I think that's exactly what the Democrats did. Remember when they said, it's amazing how, who was it? Oh God, I don't remember. This one tweet that I like to share whenever it pops up on my memories or whatever. It was like, it's amazing how well deplatforming Trump worked without any complications. So like, yeah. And then of course, like Democrats being like, okay, all we have to do is prosecute Trump and then he'll go away. Oh, look at this tell-all book John Bolton wrote. Yeah, there's no way he's going to get elected now. Stuff like that. Yeah.
It's funny because
that's exactly what the Democrats did. Okay.
They dismissed him.
Corrected.
They didn't take it seriously the first time. They didn't take it seriously when they lost. They didn't take it seriously when he lost. They didn't take it seriously that he would come back again. And in between all of that, he was a fascist and a threat to democracy.
Well, that's the thing.
Now that he's in power and is a fascist threat to democracy, we're not going to like impeach him,
Right. He was a fascist threat to democracy when they needed to fundraise, and then a joke that didn't need to be taken seriously when they just wanted you to vote for the gray neoliberal blobs that they threw up without any thought about how they might perform in an election.
Yeah.
This infamous left turn rejected the coalition building between the reformist socialist parties and the communists, erasing any distinctions between the non-communists and socialist reactionaries. The tendency was older, but Stalin transformed it into the official party line. Fascism is the bourgeoisie's fighting organization that relies on the active support of the social democracy. Social democracy is objectively the moderate wing of fascism. Ernst Thälmann, the leader of the German Communist Party, the KPD, embraced this epithet against his social democratic rivals in the SPD with particular enthusiasm. The 1929 pamphlet, What is Social Fascism?, argued that the most dangerous form of fascism was its social democratic form.
Hmm.
Social fascism was, in the words of the Comintern, an instrument for paralyzing the activity of the masses in the struggle against the regime of fascist dictatorship. Even more absurdly, Thälmann went so far as to declare in February of 1930, that the SPD-led Müller coalition, a fractionless alliance of mostly liberal parties, indicated that the rule of fascism has already been established in Germany.
Hmm.
And this is the point that I have made from day one, is that this overusage of the term fascism to describe everybody that you dislike robs it of the urgency that should come along with the term fascism.
Yeah, very much so.
Fascism, that potent wielding of anti-capitalist rhetoric and mass mobilization, along with the sort of uncannily like appealing aesthetics of fascism. That potent form of right-wing political radicalism is something that should not be dealt with lightly. Anyway, let's move on. Bad blood certainly ran both ways, and the members of the KPD had good reason to distrust the SPD. The KPD was itself formed by left-wing revolutionaries who had mostly split from the SPD over the First World War, and the leftist Spartacist uprising in its aftermath. When push came to shove, the SPD was reformist and decidedly not revolutionary. Its supporters weren't interested in overthrowing the new liberal democratic state and seizing the means of production. During the Spartacist uprising of 1919, the SPD supported the Freikorps, right-wing paramilitaries who crushed the Spartacists, murdering Karl Liebknecht, Rosa Luxemburg, and many more in the process. Even when facing the Nazis, the SPD leadership remained uninterested in allying with the KPD and its Bolshevism. They didn't just support the Freikorps. They sent the Freikorps to put down the uprising and to murder Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht.
Yeah, and when you read
was it Gustav Noske?
Yeah, it was Noska, and there were two of them. It was Ebert and Noska.
Friedrich Ebert and Gustav Noske. Noske was the defense minister, and they're the ones that sent the Freikorps to murder Liebknecht and Luxemburg. The refusal of the KPD and SPD, both left-wing and largely working-class political parties, to approach any reasonable accommodation with one another famously cleared the path for the Nazi seizure of power. Rejecting and increasingly alarmed Trotsky's public calls for the communities to ally with for the communists to ally with social democrats as fascist and counter-revolutionary. In September 1932, Thälmann argued that Trotsky's proposal was the worst theory, the most dangerous theory, and the most criminal that Trotsky had constructed in the last years of his counter-revolutionary propaganda.
That's funny because I was going to bring this particular point up. I was going to raise this, like, even in the face of the horrific crimes of the SPD, small sections of the workers' movement, like especially Trotsky, were constantly appealing to the social democrats and the communists to find a way to bury the hatchet for the sake of countering the threat while it was still possible.
Right. Despite the urgent and growing threat of Nazism, the KPD directed the bulk of its efforts against the SPD, confronting SPD unions with slogans such as "Drive out the social fascists from their jobs in the factories and the trade unions, and chase them away from the factories, labor exchanges, and professional schools." The KPD even notoriously allied with the Nazi Party in an unsuccessful August 1931 referendum to remove social democratic government in Prussia, the SPD's most important political stronghold. The SPD returned the hostility, equating Nazis with Kotsis, communists.
Yeah, drive the social fascists from their jobs in the factories and the trade unions is always the wrong approach.
Yep.
Whether you're talking about the reformists, social democrats ruling uh, your republic in during the Great Depression, or when you're talking about somebody who has said something problematic and cancelable on Twitter.
Right. I remember when they
Communists
were trying.
cannot take up the position of being formally against people having jobs.
A broader left-wing alliance could have made a difference in the final two
Yes.
German national. Huh?
No, I was just saying yes, it could have.
Oh, in the final two German national elections of 1932, before Hitler came to power, the SPD and the KPD received a combined 36.2% of the not of the to the Nazi 37.4% in July, and a combined 37.3% to the Nazi 33.1% in November, respectively. When Hitler became chancellor, the KPD called for a general strike. The SPD declined to participate, and
Yeah.
that's how the the Kapp Putsch was defeated in the 1920s. Was the SPD called the general strike against the coup that attempted to overthrow the republic.
Yeah, anybody who wants to know about that and doesn't want to take the time to read a book, well, they should. But they also could watch Babylon Berlin.
Right. What's interesting is like the Strasser brothers were on opposite sides of the Kapp Putsch. Otto was took part in the putting down of the Kapp Putsch by socialist militias, and Gregor was one of the he was with the putschists.
It's funny because the two brothers ended up kind of regularly on opposite sides, and it was always Otto on the, let's say, the better side, and Gregor on the worst
The
side. I
worst
think,
side.
is that right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Otto
Yeah.
was always the less racist and more socialist, and Gregor was always, you know, more of a Nazi. Not saying that Otto wasn't racist. He just wasn't like he was a German chauvinist rather than like a biological racist, like the way that the official line of the Nazi Party was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was still an anti-Semite and still I don't know. I'm not really quite sure of what his views of other races were, but I imagine they're probably something similar to most rightists of his day.
I mean, yeah, he
Um,
was definitely a German cultural chauvinist, national
right.
chauvinist, and
Yeah. Following the Reichstag fire of 1933, the Nazis didn't hesitate to crush both left parties. The SPD's iron front against Papen, Hitler, and Thälmann proved just as ineffective as the communists' anti-fasciste action when facing. I didn't stop my German accent when I transitioned back to when facing the power of the modern state. Uh,
you should just always use the German accent from now on.
Otto Wels, the last pre-war SPD chairman, fled before he could be arrested. But most prominent members left in the country were sent to concentration camps. Ernst Thälmann was imprisoned in March of 1933 and spent the rest of his life in Nazi captivity. On August 18, 1944, Adolf Hitler had Thälmann killed. What's interesting, though, is the SPD had maintained a network of spies that communicated first with the SPD's government in exile in Czechoslovakia, and then with the same SPD members once they fled to England, and it ended up being a network of spies that the Allies used in the Second World War, but also is heavily documented and is in the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung in Germany, which is the library that has all the SPD documents in it. So you can go there and do research about what the SPD the SPD spies taking the pulse of the German people during the war to kind of find out what people thought. Like they would just get the gossip in factories and find out what people were saying in markets and stuff like that to just kind of give a broader overall idea to people outside of Germany what was going on in Germany. It's really valuable stuff. Okay, after the
I was
Nazis,
unaware of that.
yeah, after the Nazi seizure of power in Germany, Stalin revised his strategy and encouraged European communist parties to once again join the anti-fascist coalitions. He still, however, underestimated the immediacy of the Nazi threat. The 1939 Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact briefly made the Soviet Union into Hitler's partner in revising the liberal international order established at Versailles. Stalin greedily seized up a third of Poland, all of the Baltic states, and launched a bloody and futile invasion of Finland. His reward was Operation Barbarossa, the Nazi invasion that resulted in over 20 million dead and the near total destruction of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was, of course, pragmatic, realpolitik, and an enormous mistake and a betrayal of the working class.